Hello everyone, welcome to Swalif Space. Today we are tackling something that touches many of us but is often misunderstood: toxic management. Are you struggling at work but unsure if it's real harassment or just tough leadership? Or maybe you are a manager being called toxic when you are simply trying to get results. This episode is for you. We are here to break down what toxic management really means, how to spot it, and how to handle it. No confusion, no excuses. Today with us, we have two specialists to help us dig into this issue: Dr. Fadwa Lkorchy, a licensed psychologist and the CEO of Wellbeing by Fadwa Lkorchy Psychological Therapy, and Mr. Talib Hashim, founder of TBH Hub Advisory with an impressive experience in HR, specifically in emiratization and localization. Let us now get straight to the heart of the matter with our experts. How would you define toxic management?
A toxic manager is a person or supervisor that causes harm to the individual, to the team and the employees, to their mental health, to their well-being. It causes them to have a lack of confidence in themselves, a lack of self-esteem, operates on fear, on control, on micromanagement. They tend to put down their team. They don't care about the productivity as much as they care about themselves. Sometimes they are narcissistic personalities, so they want to be the only one that shines in the group. So their concern is constantly about themselves, and they don't realize how much harm they cause the other people in the team. Yeah.
Mr. Talib, do you agree with this definition?
I agree with the definition of Dr. Fadwa, and I think the toxic, I would add to it that a toxic manager at times is a result or a product of a toxic environment. And at times, the toxic manager actually creates the toxic environment itself. So I would only add that not absolving managers as individuals from toxicity. I think it's also a topic of the organizational culture and what it creates, and it produces this toxic manager who works on the set of beliefs that you have mentioned. So that is one. And the other thing about toxic management, I would say it is also, and this is a point of view that is a little bit controversial from my side, it is also sometimes cliched. And it's a perception by employees where they feel that if they don't get what they want to get, the environment is toxic. And so I agree with all of that, but I think the definition of toxicity at times is confused
or
biased, especially against managers themselves. That's what I said.
But let's say from an employee perspective, what are the early signs of toxic management?
If you feel like you don't have clear guidelines, if you feel that there is no communication, if you feel constantly attacked or undermined in your job, that you start feeling that you're not good enough without clear guidelines of how you can improve without the resources given to you. If you start feeling that there is favoritism, that you are not so clear what competence mean or what the manager wants. Sometimes there is confusing messages. There are many ways how you can turn an environment at work toxic and make some people outcast from the group, so they feel it's only happening to them, creating the mentality of fear. I'm going to lose my job if I spoke or I contradict. Gaslighting people. If you start feeling that you are gaslighted, that you're no longer sure about your competence, whether is this real or not real. And there are a lot of symptoms that comes with that.
Are these the same symptoms that would align with the management perspective of toxic management, or HR perspective, let's say?
Yes, these are exactly the symptoms. And for HR, it's also indicative at times of a manager who is not prepared to manage employees. And that is actually a symptom of a bigger problem where you talked about favoritism. Where maybe it's something to look at. Maybe the interview process itself, there is an issue with it where people who are hired for management roles or the succession planning process is broken, so to speak. So from an HR standpoint, when there is confirmed cases of what can be a toxic environment, what HR would look at both sides of the story, try and confirm and establish the facts, and that there is actually cases of what might be considered a toxic environment, and then go deep into looking at what might be the cause. There be bias, there be an issue with the manager not being prepared for actually playing the role that they should be playing, or could there be an issue with the process of succession planning or recruitment. And for HR, it's very important because HR cares about performance, it cares about employee well-being, and it also cares about costs, bottom line, and retention, especially. By losing an employee, it's a cost on the organization itself. And the saying that people don't leave their companies, they leave their managers.
Yes.
So from an HR standpoint, it's important for them to really take accusation of a toxic environment or incidents of workplace, so to speak, unethical practices or bullying or harassment or overworking very seriously, because it costs the organization. So that's what.
What makes what would prevent an employee from speaking up from an HR perspective?
There are a lot of instances. So I was an employee first.
You've seen
I've seen
the thing from
I've
both
seen
sides.
both, and it so happened, as an employee at different junctures of time, I complained of being unhappy in my workplace and being treated unfairly, maybe because I was the youngest in the department. I was the minority, being a UAE national in that particular department. Working in a multicultural environment. So I know what it feels. But at the same time, fast forward, looking back, and if I really am honest with myself, I can be honest with myself and tell myself, actually, that wasn't an instance of bullying. It was me not being able to have the skills or the tools to exercise self-leadership, to set boundaries, to talk, because I had the perception, because I was a junior, I was young, nobody wants to listen to a young person. And this is a perception that is created by not only managers, but the culture, but the culture itself. So one is this perception that as a junior, I don't have the voice to talk. Job security is one of the top concerns of people, residents in the UAE today, job security. And so there is this worry that I might lose my job. And then there is the third thing, where you have an environment where the culture is, let's get on with it, and you don't want to feel that you're left out. So these are mainly the reasons that would stop an employee from actually communicating.
And I totally agree. And if you look at the layers underneath it, you're talking about the culture that this person, before entering the company,
Yes.
came with. Before he become an employee, he is somebody that comes with a lot of things. So they may fear to report to HR because of fear of losing a job, because of stereotype, because they are already burdened with their families,
Yes.
because they come from a culture that they don't say no, They don't know how to stand up, and you see it in a company where there is Westerners and the others. Westerners are more likely to challenge because they come from a culture that allows that.
Yes.
So they don't even question not challenging, while another person will completely not say anything and just allow any kind of toxicity to happen. And that's it's engaging in the relationship, even with the toxic manager. I don't believe people are just bad, but sometimes you put two things together and they tend to bring the worst of each other. One will just not speak out and feel dominated and feel controlled and then lose their self-esteem, while the other person will just empower them and continue to aggress them and what have you.
So is it safe to say that in some incidents, some employee would, let's say, use toxic management as an excuse for their laziness?
Yes, you have a breadth of human beings, and there is all kind. It will be unfair to managers to say there is only bad managers. There is not bad, incompetent employees who wants to find an excuse to validate why they cannot do the work and hide and stuff like that. So, and here where we have to be very clear about what style is this manager is using. There is a clear line between being aggressive manager, being passive aggressive, being a ghost manager, okay, or being an assertive manager that wants productivity and then tends to push their employees to be productive and to achieve a result because he's answerable to somebody higher than them. You understand? And yes, if you hit the incompetent or the one that just hiding behind other people, of course they can call you a bad manager and toxic manager. How
do we have such example? Maybe confidentiality and so on, but I mean, if you can mention an example for us.
I'll give you an example of, yes, it's somebody who's highly educated and highly productive, and then because her manager is less competent than her, and you have to understand that sometimes a manager, if you hate a manager, because he could be very good as a salesperson and hit the target and stuff like that, that does not make him a good manager. Because once you say manager, you're not selling products anymore, you're managing people. That's totally different. You understand? It's totally different skills. And sometimes we make managers out of people who have been successful at being very productive in a specific thing. So this person, which he was highly productive, it scares him. You understand? The more she hits her target, the more she achieves. He's trying to push her down because most of the time he doesn't even understand what she does. So that lack of knowledge that he doesn't have, he hides it behind that gaslighting her or making her feel small mistakes are more important than all the other achievements. So he discounts the positives in this case. So constantly, she comes from a culture that confronts. So she constantly confronts, therefore he started labeling her and giving her warning letter. It's about how she says things. They moved from what she's trying and feeling targeted by him. He moved her into, she's fighting all the time. She doesn't have a good communication skills and stuff like that, which infuriates her even more. You understand? Until she began to learn about herself more and said, each time you confront him, you give him exactly what he wants. So he pushes you more and he starts already labeling you. And this is when we have sometimes these managers, what they do is they attack you in a written format. They send you an email and then send your boss's boss and stuff like that. So they start already, they're going on a track where they want you to leave. So they're going to put that kind
Pushing
of pressure.
out.
So as soon as you open the email and you see your boss's boss, he's telling him without telling him. This is the passive aggressive behavior. So until she figure out that the best way is to let it go. It's to write her email not in a defensive mode, okay? In a proactive mode. You understand? And that's where he completely disarmed him. You understand? Now, she could have chosen to leave, which is one of the possibilities how to deal with a toxic manager. Or you could fight differently. You understand? Does that answer your question?
It does, yes, thank you very much. But if we look at it from a different perspective, like, is there a situation where management was toxic to an employee, but turns out it's not the situation, or
there are so many instances of that. Because as a consultant, and my core work has always been as a headhunter, and so I work with job seekers, whether they're juniors or they're seniors, and also employers, and I get to listen to perspectives from both sides. And there is a lot of instances of what you mentioned, toxic managers undermining employees. And there are a lot of instances where it actually is maybe, from what I would say, in Arabic we say zawba' fi finjan, a storm in a small cup of coffee. It is an issue, but it is an issue that can be overcome, and it doesn't require to be exaggerated to the extent where the employee starts feeling demotivated and demoralized, to the extent where they pick up the phone and say, "Talib, find me another job." So my take is, and I like to build on what you just mentioned, the example that you mentioned, which is a great example of the point I want to also build upon. Because I've been an employee and then I became an employer, and I deal with both sides, ironically, I have understood that it's not about just focusing on a toxic manager or issues. It is about building skills that will be lifelong skills that you will take throughout your journey in your career. I always tell people, your job doesn't belong to you, it belongs to your company, but your career belongs to you. You have to take ownership of your career. Now, in order to take ownership of your career, my interest and what I've learned is, what are the set of tools that person can develop and learn, where they can actually exercise it, whether it is in this work, in this company, in this job, or in another job in the future. So what you mentioned is a great example. This employee learned himself or herself to understand the manager. So there was a skill of empathy, putting yourself in the shoes of the manager. There was cultural intelligence involved. There was emotional intelligence. And there was also navigating workplace politics. And I tell people that whether I am an HR manager or I am an employee just like you, my interest is, how can you become the better version of yourself? Because today, as a junior, if you think office politics is only what you'll face today here, you will face it when you hold the top of the most top positions, and it's actually nastier on the top. And the people who get to the top don't get there just because they decided to backtrack at the first challenge of a difficult employer, right? They did that by actually learning the skills, what you mentioned, the cultural intelligence, emotional intelligence, resilience, fragility, in order to. So my message is always about how can you develop self-leadership rather than getting stuck into the blame game. And as HR, that's what I want to do. I want to be able to develop people who can become future leaders. At the same time, be able to actually stop if there is bullying or harassment really happening.
So obviously toxic management is a very important topic, and we don't want to belittle that, but we want to empower the management to prevent this from happening. So if you are a manager and you want to make sure that you are not falling into that trap of becoming a toxic manager, you want to push your team to achieve their potential, to go that extra mile. But at the same time, like, how do you differentiate that line?
First thing, get rid of the ego.
Yes.
If ego is in the way, I will never be sincere about becoming a good manager. Ego will always lead the way. So first thing is this self-awareness of I want to be a good manager, and I sincerely want to empower people around me. Not just, we need leaders who walk the walk, right? Not just talk the talk. So first thing is understanding and recognizing my ego now is talking when Sarah or Jamila is actually better than me in a job. My ego is talking when I don't feel good about Muhammad leaving his job a little bit earlier, although he actually did what I wanted him to do, right? So I think first is addressing the ego, and number two is this hunger of developing, becoming the better person, better version of yourself. I think for me, that drove me. It was always driven me towards how can I become a better self-leader, learning new skills, getting rid of egos.
But sometimes, sorry for interrupting, it's a matter of perspective. Like I would think that I'm doing a good job, that I'm putting out my good intention, but the other person might not perceive it in that way.
Yes.
They might misunderstand that. Like for example, I'm a direct person. I say exactly what I think, but the other person might think I'm rude. So it's I don't know. It's a fine line.
It is a fine line, but there is things that we all, every culture, we all agree on. It's in terms of boundary and communication skills and respect and things like that. You'll find always somebody who will agree with you and another person who doesn't agree. Like even in the assertive style or people who are very structured, you find an employee who like that. He hears you, he gets you, and he goes with that, while another employee that wants you to constantly pat them in the back. And here where the learning comes, you have to understand that when you become a manager, you're no longer at the same level as the other employees. You're no longer their friend. You were their colleague, but now you are the manager, and you are not a parent. Understand? So you have to get from that shell where you want to parent them. So it's that you can scold them, or you have a plan, as long as your communication is very clear and there is guidelines and there is open door policy where you can allow people to come and challenge you. You understand? But no nonsense. So you have exactly, if you're giving me nonsense, I'll tell you it's nonsense. Please go and do it the way. But at the same time, I'm willing to open and people who are creative, not to lump all the employee in the same thing.
So we can say like proper communication.
Proper communication and develop proper skills. The people that work with you, they're not all the same. We say this to teachers in schools. The kids that are sitting in front, they're not all one lump. You understand? The way you talk to somebody, it's going to be totally different than you talk to another.
And Dr. Fadwa, can I add also to that? A lot of people think that becoming a manager, and we have to address it, becoming a manager in the Gulf region and in the UAE does require a slightly different set of skills. There are people, managers I've worked with, who've come from environment where they're interacting with a handful of nationalities. And then when they're thrown into leading or managing a group of people for a multinational, and they have to manage 16 different nationalities. And as you mentioned, some nationalities accept 100% candor. They don't accept anything else, and some, they need a different approach. You take them privately to a room. Self-respect, loss of face is important to them. So a lot of people fail in that, and I think with managers, they need to understand and be real about this is not just a walk in the park. You are dealing with different nationalities, and then there's the underlying culture of the country where you're dealing with the locals. They have a distinct values and cultures as well. And at the same time, you have to have that hunger and thirst and curiosity. I'm in an environment, I'm learning something new. Otherwise, why are you here? So that's what I would add to that.
I totally agree with you. It's, are you able to read the environment that you are in, or you come in with your own perception of what you're supposed, and you're trying to fit that hat on all of them the same. And especially in UAE, you have so many. They have different styles. So if you're not going to invest time in these employees to understand the different styles and what, because at the end of the day as a manager, you look for productivity.
Yes.
And the more women with children, women without children, you know, what do you want? Okay, yes, I agree with you, the example that you gave earlier. If an employee wants to leave 1 hour early because he or she wants to go catch up with the kids and they're highly productive, why am I telling them, no, you have to sit? Versus another employee that really is not productive, he hasn't, yes, I want them to finish their hours, then probably I'll deal with them differently. Does that make sense?
Yes, but from an employee perspective, if you are in a situation where you are being, managed by someone who is toxic, what would be your advice? Like, what would be the first steps to prevent this?
First of all, and I always tell my clients that are in this situation, first of all, not reactive, proactive. You cannot deal with anything by avoiding it, by blaming. You have to understand anything, know yourself. What do you want? Okay, because sometimes this is the environment, but it's giving me something. There are companies that crushes the employees, long hours and what have you. When you enter to this company, everything is a contract, just like marriage. Or what did you want when you came in? What would make you stay? Is it the pay? Is it other benefits that you get? Know yourself first. Second, develop yourself. Before you deal with another person, a manager, deal with yourself. How are you going to respond? What would work again with that person? Because if you confront a manager that is aggressive, it's just going to blow out of proportion. Are you ready to leave? Because you may do that if you're ready to leave. So it's very important that you know yourself, you work on yourself, then you decide which path you want.
But that would not change the management. So you mean like we have to change our attitude towards them?
Yes, because in every relationship it takes two to tango. There is no abuser if there is no victim, somebody that says it's okay for me to be a victim. You understand? And here where you asked earlier, did some people push back and they stayed in the company and they tried? Yes. You understand? It is often that I work with people how to actually either leave because you have better opportunities. And again, the makeup of people, some people can push back, others cannot push back. You understand? Or some people that actually push back, asked for a raise and stuff, and they get all of the above. You understand?
But if we look at it from the HR perspective, then, I mean, I know always HR is put out to be the villain, unfortunately. Yes. They are the ones who reject our leaves, reject our increments, and so on. But as an HR, you have a responsibility towards the team. So if you, first of all, how would you identify if there is some toxic management going on in the organization? And the second part would be, how would you deal with it?
So recognizing if there is repeat incidents and complaints about that particular manager, that would be one flag. The second is HR needs to go back to its most basic roots. Back when factories were built, and it used to be called personnel department. When HR was built, it was actually personnel department. It's actually a department to listen to people's gossip. What do people talk and say about Muhammad and Abdullah? Are they creating a union? Are they going to rally to ask for lesser working hour? But also on the positive, it was about being on the ground and actually listening to grievances and mitigating issues proactively. So HR, unfortunately, at times seems to be administrative rather than being proactive and strategic and actually being human. I'd say something which is bring human to the human resource function. Yes. So in order to do that, HR needs to also be on the ground and has to be objective and unbiased and be able to collect information and not always, and this is a fault I would say, and I see in HR, they always position themselves as advocates for the company against the employees. Yes. Yes. And that is why here in the government of the UAE, you have the Ministry of Human Resource, Mohre, actually takes more of a leaning to protect employee over the employer. They want employees to come in and give their grievances. So I think one HR needs to be, there has to be soul searching and to understand the purpose of HR, being on the ground, being objective, collecting information and seeing if there is incident. How do you deal with toxic managers? One is to directly engage the toxic manager in a conversation that is built on empowering, not blame, but actually empowering, because people have emotions, they're human beings. Some people might take it defensively rather than critical feedback. So HR has to have that ability to do that. And if it is repeated, then what HR will need to do is escalate it a little bit further. Maybe it'll be documented, it'll be communicated by email, and that might even take towards disciplinary. The issue I have, and I would again blame HR, is they're very reluctant to do that with managers.
Yes.
And very eager to do that with employees. So I would agree with you, Dr. Fadwa, on that, because it is something that is very common.
I knew HR was wrong.
No, I'm not saying HR is wrong, but I think HR has a responsibility to pull up their socks, and because their role is very important to both employees and managers.
Right.
Yeah, and that's to foster trust.
Definitely. What about trainings? Like, do you think there will be any type of training or programs or anything that managers or employees need to do to take to be prepared for this?
From this psychological perspective, there are a lot of workshops that we do with the managers or employees, and sometimes we pull managers and employees, like for example personality dimensions, where it does for 4 hours they're doing this workshop. It's fun, and it teaches them the different types of personality and how they can work, because in a team you have those 4 personalities, but you don't know how to work. We tend to always want to work with like people. You understand, that are like us, it's easier to deal with. And we don't know how to deal with people that operate totally different. And again, here, and there are a host of other things that can be done. Retreats, for example. Taking the managers, so you can foster that kind,
closer relationship.
Yes, closer relationship, collegiality, and all of that. People in a relaxing environment where you do different games, different activities, different learning experiences, and what have you. Many things. The tools are available, but not always. Again, and we go back to HR, and I don't mean to vilify HR, but because HR deals with employees, with their managers. But sometimes they are so swamped with paperwork and pages and pages of insurance and other things that they leave the most important person, which is the people. You understand? Right. How do you foster communication between them and things safe for everyone?
So if I answer the training part, 2 gaps I've observed from employers. One, to managers, an area for development is the cultural intelligence and culture integration skill managers will need to have, especially when they're managing multicultural environment. And this is something that we've seen managers call us for quite frequently. It's a powerful skill to have. The second is work readiness, or the soft skills. What used to be called soft skills, but now HR calls power skills. And you'll be surprised, and it's everything from communication, time management, dealing with multicultural environment, self-leadership, and so forth. So that is something in terms of training. Those are 2 training programs that I feel are very important today.
Thank you both for sharing your insights today. Toxic management is a complex issue with no easy answer, but understanding the realities help us all navigate better. To our listeners, recognize the signs, trust your instinct, and remember that seeking help is a strength, not a weakness. Until next time, take care and stay informed. Thank you.